unfortunately, it makes it very easy for us to be patriotic because so many opportunities to challenge our government. Because we can do it from, property rights on down, and monetary policy and war policy, the whole works, and civil liberties. But we are at a point where we have to make a decision. If we continue to do what we're doing and not cut back on spending, they say, well, we can't let anybody fall through the cracks, and nobody's proposing these cuts. If we can continue to do this, we destroy everything, because we'll have runaway inflation. You cannot spend money endlessly. You can't have a debt of $1.3 or $1.6 trillion every year and monetize that debt and print the money. They're still taking our money, and that's why it's holding together. But one of these days, there's going to be an event in the world, someplace, and already there's starting to be hints that they're serious about going into Iran. Oil is now $103, and they're expecting $4 a gasoline. As a matter of fact, I think up in this area of the country, the gasoline prices are pretty high. But it could get a lot worse on that, and it can move rapidly. And this will hurt everybody, no matter how badly you want to take care of poor people by sending them more money. What if the money doesn't work? What if it doesn't buy anything? So it'll be at a point of no return, and that's why continue to do what we're doing is the worst thing that we can do. The most important thing is to admit the truth. Instead of putting our heads in the sand and saying, oh, there's no problems, we can work our way out of it. The central bankers know what they're doing, and Congress will finally get their act together. Well, that's a dream, isn't it? So, but this is important for us to figure out what we're going to do. And to me, it is not difficult. It would take a year or so to get back on our feet, but not much longer. Right now, we're into our fourth year of this super recession. If you talk to the people who are unemployed, actually, if you go back to the old method of calculating unemployment, it's 22%. And the government is saying, well, maybe it's a little higher, but at least we don't have inflation. Yeah, we don't have inflation. Inflation, ask the people who are on fixed incomes who are receiving Social Security. They know darn well that they're not keeping up and their standard of living is going down. So just because they say there's no price inflation, believe me, they can't convince the American people. They can get away with it for a while, and they can even fool the markets for a while. But now is the time that we have to make a decision. And the decision has to be, is it going to be more government or is it going to be more freedom? I know where I'm going. I have often said, because I firmly believe that if I could have my freedom but less prosperity, I would take my freedom. Is we don't have to make a choice. The more freedom we have, the more prosperity there will be. But the more self-reliance there has to be. Assumption that we're responsible for our lives. And that's what freedom is all about. Understanding that freedom comes to us, as I said, in a natural way. We get our lives and our liberties from an outside source, a natural way or a God-given way. And therefore, your life is your own. Your life is yours to make it worthwhile, or your life is yours to waste. It is up to you. If you deliver that responsibility to the government to take care of us from cradle to grave, they can't do it, but in their effort to do it, they destroy our liberties. And this is what has happened for too long, and of course, the benefits go to the wealthy rather than the poor that it was intended. But the magnificent thing about our country, at least at the beginning, but we have lost, is freedom was seen as a whole unit. Freedom was seen as an individual thing. Civil liberties, a right to our religious, a right to read books, the right to put into our bodies what we want. They weren't separate things. They were all one thing. And then economic liberty was the same thing. But today we have some people, a token effort to defend economic liberty and freedom in the marketplace. But there'll be another group who will say, well, we have to watch civil liberties, but we don't like the way you're spending your money. We're going to take your money and spend it for you. There is nothing wrong with putting this back together as the founders understood it. Freedom is yours. Freedom is your life. Freedom is the right to your liberty, and it ought to be the right to keep the fruits of all your labors. And this would solve so many problems. And it's a system. Some people don't like the idea, and they say, well, some people might misuse their freedoms, and they'll do things I just don't approve of. Well, so what? Yeah. Some people might get their money, and they might not spend it like I do, because I'm pretty much of a miser. You know, I try to protect my money, and I'm not a gambler. But if somebody wants to gamble, that's okay. But they shouldn't come to me and expect me to bail them out when they gamble their money away. In the same way with a personal lifestyle, if it's not good for you and hurts you, you have to assume that responsibility. But the other magnificent thing about this understanding about what liberty is all about, you don't have to ask people what they're going to do with their liberty. But when it goes to the government, then you have to ask, and you have to fight over to get some of your money back, and then they have all the rules and regulations of what you kind of hoops you have to jump through to get your money back from them, whether it comes to the state or you as an individual. But if you can bring people together and allow them to use their liberty any way they want, except don't hurt anybody, don't take their property, be honest with people, but use your life and your money and your liberty as you so choose. Then all of a sudden you see people coming together, not because they agree with their religion, or not because they agree with the books that you're going to read or what you want to study, or not because of your lifestyle. But you come together because we all agree that we want to be free people. We want to be ourselves. And one thing to remember is the fact that if you legalize freedom of choice in everything possible except that which uses violence, it doesn't mean you endorse anything that they do. I mean, if somebody wants to take their religious liberties and practice a religion, you figure, well, that doesn't make any sense to me. But that's up to them, as long as they're not pushing it on us. This is why, of course, theocracies are so bad, and our efforts to tell other people around the world. If we don't want our next door neighbor to telling us what to do on Sundays and Mondays and Tuesdays, why in the world should we accept the notion that the people around the world are going to accept us to tell them how to run their countries? When we go over there, as always with good intentions, we go over to make the world safe for democracy. We're going to spread democracy. If you don't do it, we're going to bomb you. But we go over there, and we finally get control of the country, and we come up with these elections, and they have an election, and lo and behold, they finally get an election. But they elect the wrong people, so we won't even accept them as their leaders. I mean, they have to elect the ones we tell them to elect. It's such a farce and such a pretense that it's this acceptance of people that should, whether it's international or domestically or economically, bring people together on this whole idea and tolerate people without saying that you endorse what they do. There is no reason why this shouldn't be able, in our society, in this country especially, this should bring people together, and has over the years. But one other danger has been, too often in our early history, we took away rights for people belonging to certain groups. But rights don't belong to anybody because they belong to a group. They should never be taken away from anybody because they belong to a certain group. But also, privileges should be passed out, and rights cannot be passed out to certain groups. You don't have rights because you belong to a group. You have rights because you're an individual, and your rights came to you in a natural way, and not because government gave them to you or because you belong to a certain group. I am fully convinced that if we would restore this message and understanding, not go backwards at all, because freedom is a young idea. It's not thousands of years old. Tyranny is thousands of years old. Even inflation is thousands of years old. So it's just been in recent memory, not memory, but in the last 100 or 200 years, especially in our life, in the lifetime of our country, that this has been tested. And it worked rather well, and we gave up on it. So right now, that is what we have to do. Not only should we restore those principles, we don't have to go back and be firmly fixed in an age of 100 or 200 years ago. We can have a better monetary policy. We can have a better understanding what the concept of liberty is. We can have a better understanding of property rights. We can have a better understanding how the world works better with very limited governments and less bombs. So this is a system. it was said early in our history by Samuel Adams that it doesn't take a majority, and it really doesn't. The majority of the people usually go along with leaders, and a group like this is usually in the minority. We remain in the minority. Most people vote at the last minute, and they check around. So the minority, what Adam said is that in order to bring about change, you have to have a tireless, irate minority. And it's not necessary to have the majority. But that minority has to be doing something. And the way he described it, you have to be starting brush fires of liberty in the minds of men. And that I can report to you is what's happening in this country today. There are a lot of brush fires every single day. Every day in the last few days, I come and I find that there are already brush fires starting in these many, many communities around the country. People are looking toward this whole concept of liberty. So this is definitely moving in the right direction. We have people who've been sitting on the bylines for decades now. They sort of gave up. They didn't feel like they were being represented. They're coming out of the woodworks, and they do understand what real liberty is all about because it's coming alive again. But the most encouragement should come from the younger generation who are waking up, and they love the ideas of liberty. So in spite of our problems, we can be